Hi everyone! So today's video is a topic I was actually asked about a while ago, but I just hadn't gotten around to it. So here we are. We're talking about enemas! And this is a not particularly popular, but in my opinion, one of the most highly effective methods of promoting detoxification that you can use while you're trying to heal. And so I had someone, I think I mentioned it offhand in another video, and I had someone comment and ask me to expand on the process of what enemas look like when you do them at home. Now, this is not really highly respected in a lot of conventional medicine, but it is a pretty universal practice among more natural and traditional healing modalities. And we have evidence of this being a medical practice, all the way back to ancient Ayurveda and ancient Chinese medicine, even like ancient Egyptian and Greek medicine. It has been used for a very long time to help promote health when it comes to a variety of different types of conditions. It is if you were doing gaps in the traditional way that it was meant and the way that it was written originally, it is actually a cornerstone part of the process. So much so, in fact, when you go to train to be a GAPS practitioner, you have to practice doing an enema on yourself so that you can properly coach your clients to do this. So I think maybe some of the other people in the class were a little surprised at this. I've done them myself for a long time, so it didn't even faze me, but it was kind of funny to see people's reactions. So the like I said, these are being used to treat a variety of conditions and have, historically been used to treat a variety of different conditions. But the primary way that I use it is in cases of chronic constipation, where people have a buildup of compacted stool. Now, you can also go get a colonic done professionally, which is kind of like a turbo enema, right? There's a little more oomph behind it. So that is something that you can go get done professionally. But I find that just doing enemas at home with a basic kit is also very, very effective and costs a lot less. And you can do it more often, so it's going to be more therapeutic. So the issue is that a lot more people are chronically constipated than realize it, because the kind of conventional definition of constipation does not actually cover all constipation that people experience. Now, not going every single day is not necessarily constipation, especially if you're eating a very nutrient-dense diet that is very high in animal foods, because the primary bulk of stool is waste, right? And fiber is actually a waste product. Like, we don't actually digest fiber, right? So the more fiber, the more plants you are eating, the more you're going to have bowel movements. And so if you're eating a carnivore diet or a very heavily meat-based diet, sometimes you're not going to go every single day, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're constipated. But for most situations, we do want to see at least one bowel movement every day, or certainly at least every other day. And you can also go every day or go every other day and still be constipated, and usually it will be because you are getting these kind of small rabbit pellets where it's like it doesn't really feel complete, or you get this sensation that like I haven't like completely voided. Like there's usually a sensation you get of like I still feel like there's stuff in there that hasn't come out, or you still have this feeling of being kind of bloated or backed up. It's really a physical sensation that people will get where they can tell they're not completely voiding their bowels, even if they are having some movement every day. And then of course there's more classic constipation where people aren't going for 4, 5, 6, 7 or more days at a time, and that's definitely I would call very severe constipation. But anything on that spectrum is still constipation. And again, the problem is that, compacted stool can start to build up. That is very dry and sticky, if that makes sense. It kind of starts to get a glue-like consistency to it, and it really gloms on to the walls of the colon, and it can be a really terrible feedback loop with gut dysbiosis and conditions like SIBO, where, a lot of times an initial imbalance in the microbiome is what is causing the constipation in the first place, right? If we have certain families of overgrown bacteria, especially methane producing bacteria, that does tend to contribute to constipation. But, when we have that compacted stool that has been there for who knows how long, right? I mean, it could be weeks, months, years even, in some cases, can become this feedback loop because little bits of food and fecal matter that have been sitting there for a long time, it can really become a feeding ground for opportunistic microbes, and ideally to prevent the buildup of opportunistic bacteria, we want to be flushing the colon out regularly so there's no buildup that all these bugs can feed on all the time. Another issue is that a lot of the microbes that tend to overgrow and contribute to constipation, part of how they do that is that as part of their life cycle, they're producing toxic compounds, right? So these opportunistic microbes, they're okay in small amounts. It's normal to have them in small amounts, but when they start to overgrow, they're producing a lot of extra of these toxic compounds, which can actually have a paralyzing effect on the nerves in our digestive tract. And so this is especially true for people who just feel like there's no peristalsis, like there's just no movement happening, like it just feels paralyzed or stuck. It may be that the type of SIBO you have is producing these toxic compounds that is then feedback loop contributing to more paralysis in the digestive tract. So you can see how this can really snowball, and sometimes the best thing you can do is just kind of give yourself a reset, and this isn't a one and done thing. It's not like you flush your colon out once and you're done. I mean, this is something that needs to be done regularly, for months or even years, to help your system kind of reset itself, and clear out some of that buildup that can be contributing to these symptoms. So that kind of chronic constipation and hard to knock SIBO is one of the indications. And this is more for coffee enemas, which I'm going to talk about also. But high amounts of toxicity, like people who feel like they have a really congested bile system, like maybe they have gallbladder issues, they've had trouble digesting fat, they can tell they just have liver congestion, they tend to be a slow detoxer, maybe they have estrogen dominance, right? They just have kind of or high levels of anxiety or stress hormones. They can just tell their liver is not really effectively processing things out. This would be another indication. And I'll talk more about why that is in a minute. So, before I go into that, what are the contraindications for doing enemas? And really, there's not many. The really only contraindications are as if you have such severe digestive inflammation, like in cases of really severe ulcerative colitis or diverticulitis, that you're so inflamed and you're having active rectal bleeding, and pushing a bunch of liquid into your colon is just going to exacerbate that inflammation and could trigger more bleeding, which of course can be dangerous because you can excessively bleed out of those areas since they are sensitive. So if you have active bleeding, wait until the inflammation has settled down a bit before you try something like this. Now, contraindications that people will say exist that I don't think do exist are the fact that they're risky, first of all, risky or dangerous. You'll see this if you Google, home enema kit, you'll get all these Healthline articles and things popping up saying that they're super risky and all this stuff, or that you can get addicted to them or dependent on them. And I don't actually think either of those are true. So if you actually look into the reasons why some of these conventional medical articles are saying that it's risky, or a couple of isolated case studies of people who didn't properly sterilize their enema equipment and gave themselves a bacterial infection, or someone who did have that kind of inflammation I was talking about and triggered, a rectal tear, which caused massive complications. So, I mean, there are these very isolated cases, which a little bit of education could have easily prevented them. And frankly, it makes me a little angry when I see stuff like this, because there are medications that are prescribed every day that, hundreds of people, thousands of people, I should say, really, are having adverse reactions to, and there's not big warnings on those, right? But you have like a couple people have these very unusual responses due to, not doing it properly, and suddenly this is a risky practice, right? So I just don't buy that. And the other thing, that they can get addictive, or you can get dependent on them. I mean, here's the thing. You can get addicted to or dependent on anything. There are always going to be people who overdo things. I mean, there are those stories of people who were like spending their whole life doing coffee enemas. They were doing like 5 or 6 a day and got like super depleted of iron and like messed up their digestive tract and like all this stuff, right? So you can take anything to extreme. And so, of course, this is no different. There's always going to be people who do that. But as long as you are being reasonable about it, I don't think it's a concern. I have never seen someone do these and then not be able to have a bowel movement afterwards. Now, I have seen people not give themselves a chance to adjust. So there are people I have talked to who, were doing an enema every day for months and then stopped, and then 2 days they didn't have a bowel movement, and they're like, see, now I'm dependent on them. And that's really not always the case. You do need to give your body a chance to catch up to the fact that, like, oh, I need to like stimulate my own bowel movement now, because I've gotten used to having it stimulated for me. But that doesn't mean it will never be stimulated again. You just have to give your body a chance to transition. It can actually improve your long-term ability to have your own bowel movements, because it helps you strengthen your pelvic floor, and it stimulates the contraction of the nerves in your colon and even your vagus nerve, where it comes down into your pelvis. Like holding in water or coffee in that area actually has like toning and strengthening effects to the muscles and the nerves in that area. So it could actually benefit this in the long term, just on a structural or a more physiological way as well. Okay, so that's the basic idea behind it, when it's indicated, potential contraindications, myths, all that good stuff. Let's talk about how to actually do it. So the first thing you want to do, if you've never done it before, is try a basic enema. And you do need to order a enema kit online. It's basically a hot water bottle with like a little rectal attachment to it. Now, I can't find these in drugstores anymore. I remember the first time I tried it, I could, but I recently tried to buy a new one and I could not find it anywhere. So I had to order one online, so you may have to do that as well. Now, you do not want to use those little pre-made enema kits you get in the grocery store, because they are full of a lot of toxic compounds. So that is not the answer here. We want to home make a formula and do it ourselves. So you do need to get like a enema kit. If you Google enema kit, tons will pop up. And basically you want to fill it with warm filtered water. You want to be able to put your finger in it and not burn yourself, right? But the warm water can help kind of detach or help, pull out the compacted stool that you're trying to get out. So it's nice to have it, and it's just more comfortable, right? If it's like body temperature. So you want it warm. Now, you could fill the bag about halfway full if you've never done it before and you just want to practice. That's totally fine. You can fill one of those, enema bags, like the hot water bottle bags, all the way full. That would be kind of like the maximum amount that you would want to do. So you can work up to that. And there's a couple things that you might want to add to that warm filtered water. One would be a, half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of salt, right? Because we want to not dehydrate ourselves. If we actually just use plain water, we can actually strip minerals out and dehydrate us. So you do want to add a little bit of salt. It doesn't have to be exact, just a little pinch. And you can also use some baking soda. Now, you do want to use like nice food grade baking soda that's aluminum free, and is processed without chemicals, all that good stuff, right? What's great about baking soda, and this is like, again, a half a teaspoon, just like a pinch. You want to put it in while you're heating the water up so it starts dissolving. But this can actually help to pull strands of candida out. Candida is notoriously hard to detoxify from, even when you're on a candida diet or a gut reset diet or a GAPS diet, anything like that, because the tendrils of candida can really implant into the the lining of the digestive tract pretty securely. And baking soda actually helps it kind of detach. It does not like that pH, and so it will start to detach. So you can put a little baking soda in. It can also just help pull stubborn compacted stool out, which is nice too. And I actually like to add a probiotic. Enemas are a great way to introduce probiotics directly into your digestive tract. Obviously, you can take them orally, but then it has to go all the way through the stomach, and putting them directly in the other way can sometimes be more effective, actually. So you can use probiotic capsules. I usually recommend people use between 3 and 6, probiotic capsules. Wait until it's, if you've warmed up the water really hot and you're cooling it off, wait until it's cool enough to put your finger in and then mix in the probiotic capsules. Just empty them out into the water. And then if you don't want to use probiotics, like commercial probiotics, you can also use homemade probiotics. So you can use fermented brine, right? Like the fermented vegetable brine. I have a tutorial on how to do that. Basically the juice from sauerkraut. Obviously you don't want any of the actual vegetable matter in there, right? But just the water from it. And like a third of a cup, or a couple tablespoons, just a little bit. Doesn't have to be exact. You can also use the whey drippings from your own yogurt. So if you've made yogurt or kefir and you have dripped it with cheesecloth and made farmer's cheese, I think I talk about how to do that in my All About Yogurt video. The whey drippings that are the leftovers, you can put that in your enema as well. And again, great way to get probiotics in. Alrighty. So basically, you want to just fill your enema bag with that mixture as full as you feel comfortable, less first, so you get used to it. And then some of them have a little valve, and some of them you just have to use your finger as a stopper for the water. And you want to make sure you let the air out, so make sure that you hang it upside down and open the valve, or take your thumb off the end until any air stuck in it comes out. And once water starts running out, you can close that valve or put your finger over it to stop it. And then you do the insertion. It is always good, of course, to use some kind of lubrication. So coconut oil is a good, easy one that you can use. And then you want to lie on your right side. Some people prefer to lie on their stomach or be on all fours. It doesn't really matter. Basically, you just want to get comfortable, and be in a position that you feel like you can hold it for, a reasonable amount of time. Usually for just a basic water enema, 5 to 10 minutes should suffice. And then you can go to the toilet and release it. Some people like to rub their belly or kind of rock from side to side while they're doing it, just to help dislodge things. But whatever you need to do is fine. Now, ideally, you do want to keep doing it until you don't see whole pieces of stool coming out anymore. Now, the water doesn't have to be perfectly clear, right? But ideally, you want to keep doing it until, you've seen no more big chunks coming out. That's how you know you've really done a good flush. So that can take sometimes 2 to 4 rounds, so do this, on a morning when you don't have much else going on. And I like to do it before I eat in the morning just because that feels better, but you can do it in the evening after a light dinner as well. Now, coffee enemas. So this one is much more specifically indicated if you're dealing with liver congestion, bile stones, gallbladder stones, you're dealing with heavy metal toxicity, you're doing a major mold detox, anything that is really focused on detox or the bile system. Coffee enemas are particularly indicated because there are compounds in coffee, there are antioxidant compounds in coffee that directly stimulate some of the liver's detoxification pathways. And so what it seems to do in practice is basically just supercharge your liver's filtering abilities. And so after you do a coffee enema for the next 12 to 24 hours, your liver is just going to be filtering your blood at double time. And so really, really helpful. especially if you're having any detox-related symptoms, which can be things like migraines, or you're having a lot of rashes or acne, anything that shows that like you're having toxins like trying to get out like any way they can. This would be a great thing to do. This is traditionally part of the Gerson protocol for cancer, where he has people doing coffee enemas like 4 times a day. And people have had mixed results with the Gerson protocol, so I don't really use it in my practice. I don't really know enough about it. I've seen mixed things about it, but some people swear by it, and again, I said earlier, like, if you're doing it 5 or 6 times a day, it's too much. But in a case of like severe cancer, I mean, you can do whatever you need to do to try to heal that. But for most people, just daily, couple times a week, something like that should be plenty. I usually recommend that if you have a period where you're really doing like an intensive detox period, do it daily for a while, a couple weeks, a month or two, and then like a good maintenance amount is like 2 times a week. I usually recommend consecutive days so that you really get a good flush. Now, you do always want to do a basic enema first because it's very hard to hold a coffee enema in if you haven't just done a basic flush first. And to really get the therapeutic dose of a coffee enema, you want to hold it in for at least 15 minutes because that's how long it takes for the coffee compounds to reach the portal vein that go to the liver. You want to make a weak coffee, right? You don't want to put in like 4 cups of strong coffee because you will feel the effects of the caffeine. So if you have sensitivity to caffeine, type of POTS that like really gets triggered by caffeine, or adrenal fatigue that gets triggered by caffeine, or mental health issues that get triggered by caffeine, that might be a contraindication here. But honestly, there's not a lot of other contraindications. Just make a weak coffee. So make a coffee at like half strength, and put 4 cups of it in so that you're really getting more like 2 cups of coffee, right? And then just fill the rest up with warm water. You can also put probiotics in coffee enemas. I often do. You just need to make sure it cools enough, obviously, that until you can touch it with your finger before you put the probiotics in. But same thing, fermented brine, whey drippings, pharmaceutical or like supplement probiotic capsules, anything like that can also be added. All right. I think that's all I want to say. So yeah, like I said, when you're in a period, like if you're doing basic enemas for constipation and compacted stools, doing it every day for a couple weeks until you can get a really nice reset, and then maintaining at a couple days a week, fairly long term until you really see more solid reversal of your symptoms. And same things with a coffee enema. If you're going through a period of intensive detox, do it every day for a while, and then twice a week on consecutive days, for a few more months, or rotate it like every time you're going through a period of intensive detox, or you're having detox or Herxheimer's symptoms, like I talked about in my last video. You can up the frequency for a while and then get back to a maintenance once that has passed. So yeah, it's not a super popular thing because I think in our culture we can get a little awkward about these types of issues. But honestly, once you do it, you feel so much better that you realize like, okay, there may be something to this, and it's just a really powerful method of intervention for the types of things that I talked about in this video. So if you have additional questions about it, please let me know. And yeah, I hope this was helpful.